to the round table. We dance whenever we're able. We do routines, we call scenes, with footwork impeccable. We dine well here in Camelot. We eat ham and jam and spam a lot. We're knights of the round table. Our shows are for mid-table. So many times we're given rhymes that are quite unsingable. We're opera mad in Camelot. We sing from the diaphragm.
Croeso and welcome to Tales for Wales, the pod that never fails to bring you back to the white, red and green screen and pop their little fella into a bottle of popcorn, a box of popcorn, and hope for the best. I know you did just lay that on me like fucking absolutely 2 seconds before.
That was a hospital pass I just threw to you then.
Yeah,
pretty unfair of me. And I instantly criticised you as well.
But yes, Tales for Wales, and we're back, and it's me,
sorry,
Jack.
I just realised that. I've just realised that my name is.
Don't worry about
it. Is that going to show up on the video?
Because we can get rid of it if you like.
Probably
Actually, let's see. Do you want me to change it? Do you want me to update it? Because it currently says Conti.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter about changing it now, does it? Because you've just out the cat's out of the bag.
There you go. But that looks a bit more professional for the socials.
Director Dan.
Yeah, Director Dan.
Yeah. I love the idea that like people would be going, that film, I can't wait to see it. What's the director's name? It was something like Conti or something like that.
But as you can tell, we're joined for a return guest from Director Dan, who's the director of the upcoming Welsh fantasy film Excalibur. And me and Jack have been so excited to get you back on, mate. We loved the first time, but we're very much looking forward to hearing what's new. But how are you doing? Should we start off with drinks? If anyone's having a drink,
of course.
You know what? Tragically, I'm not drinking because I just got
too much.
I got too much to do. So
you should come to our lives. We've got nothing but drink.
I thought you were going to say, Frank, like you should try BNS. Like, you whinging about making a huge film, and we're like, try working a desk job for yeah.
No, I need a drink today. I've had an absolute slogs full today, so I'm excited for a little tipple. But I'm having this. I'm having Appleston rum. Have you seen this before? I'm looking at the wrong camera.
Oh, very nice.
Not familiar.
It's really nice. It's really. It's like it tastes like
an
a drink.
apple-based beverage, don't you?
I do like an apple-based beverage, but it's lovely. So I'd recommend it. It gets the Tales for Wales seal of approval. And what are you drinking, Jack? Some kind of
an equally fancy
lager
thing. It's called. I think it's a German brew. It's called Budweiser. It's on offer in Co-op at the moment. If you're near one, just FYI. And then I might switch on to this bad boy. This is something Amy got me for my my anniversary recently. Bush rum Coke. Nice. As you can see, half of it's already gone. I had a very good anniversary. So,
anyway, enough of the booze talk. How are you, Dan? What's new?
Oh God, this is one of the things that there's so much happening that it's really. It's difficult enough to remember the stuff. Never mind remembering who knows what's going. Who have I told what to? Because you know that thing when you go, I saw this great film the other week, and you go, I was there with you. But it's like that, except telling someone, we're going to animate this, and go, I know, I'm the animator, or something.
Well, should we do a recap for people who might not hear the first episode, which we did probably like a year ago now? Maybe
it was a while back now, wasn't it? Because I think it has been that long. It's it feels like it wasn't that long ago because I remember it quite well. But it was it probably was a while back.
We mentioned online that you were going to come on.
So it's funny, isn't it? Like that relationship you have with people. I listen to your podcast, and then I feel like I've spoken to you or something. We keep in vague touch, don't we? But then. And then I figured, you're up to date on things, but of course, I've just been listening to you while I've been,
It's a one-way conversation that way, isn't it? That's the problem.
I
can imagine you going like, those bastard declares you were on about the other week. Oh, what are they like?
Well, you came on about a year and a half ago. If people haven't checked it out, they should. But maybe, Dan, you can give a little update as to what you are, who you are, and what you're doing.
What you are and what you're bloody well doing here,
yeah. Hell am I doing? So Excalibur is a fantasy film telling the Welsh and original version of King Arthur. because of course King Arthur was Welsh.
Indeed, he was.
He was Welsh. This isn't some sort of excavated thing. He was Welsh. He was mentioned first, I think, in the Gododdin, which is a poem by Aneirin, a bard, Welsh bard. We think it was by Aneirin anyway. And then he was mentioned by Gerallt Cymru. Is it Gerallt Cymru?
Yeah. Gerald of Wales, if you want to go, if you want to anglicise him. Yeah.
And then Geoffrey of Monmouth in the. He's Welsh, and this is it's not so much. It is reclaiming that story, but it's a fantasy story, which is essentially reclaiming Western European fantasy for Wales. So it's very, I would say, the closest thing to it is something like Lord of the Rings. But it's fantasy. It's not semi-historical or gritty or anything like that. It's heavily based in things like a Mabinogion and the Mabinogi.
I was going to say, Dan, sorry to interrupt, but like the last time we spoke, you made a sort of big point about it being the sort of original myths, the much more fantastical, less sort of Christianized ones you get sort of later in history. It's going back to those roots of kind of like the I hesitate to say pagan myths, but you know what I mean, like sort of the old Celtic stuff, and like a lot more the fantastical stuff. Whereas I feel like a lot of things, like when things became Christianized, myths tended to get like whitewashed a little bit with the only myth magic in them is like sort of Jesus based or like God based.
Jesus magic.
Jesus magic. What I'm saying is, can you confirm there is no Jesus magic in Excalibur?
There's no Jesus magic, and I mean that's partly because I think there's a feel of it. There's a feel for once you get religious, churchy stuff into, you wouldn't have that in many other fantasy films, I think, and it just brings a sort of I don't know what it is, but I want magic. I want. Are we allowed to swear in?
Of course,
of course we are. Yeah. People always ask that question. Like, we're some pious religious people as well. We're absolute scumbags. I do like the people think
there wasn't a sort of honey trap to get you in and we've actually converted since the last time we spoke to you. This is a Christian podcast now.
Yeah. Have you heard of the word of Christ? We're still heathens here. We're still heathens.
What I want out of the story of King Arthur is I want magic. I want this kid who in this beautiful land invaded by the wild Northmen and all these warring absolute arseholes, these hideous cruel people. I want this kid to get the magic sword and kick the fuck out of the bad guys and
what more do you
magic.
Want?
Yeah.
And I don't want I want a sort of wizard who does magic, cool magic, that we haven't seen before. And I want monsters, and that's what we've got in this.
Proper fantasy, isn't it? That's what we're after. Like that's what I get whenever I see like you posting about it when we talked to you last time. It's like that a bit of proper chewy fantasy to sink my teeth into.
We'll say this up front. Dan, you've made it like uniquely Welsh, but also very like collaborative, and you want people to kind of feel like involved in it, don't you? So you have a Patreon that people can go find. Do you know the Patreon off the top of your head? So we'll
it's
put it in the show
Patreon, actually. It's just at excaliburfilm.com.
Excalibur Film,
There's a thing called a crew, which is the Welsh for the crew. And it's you can join this idea, the crew behind, and you can see the behind the scenes as we make it. We've got our own production model, which is another thing I could waffle on for hours on, but it's something that's quite exciting really, because it's called Cyfangrau, and it sort of means like total creation. So we haven't gone to a studio and said, can we have 13 million quid to make this film, and then they've put this together. We've gone from the ground up with it, in a sense, so it's completely independent. And one of the things we're doing is showing people how we're making it as we make it.
I remember seeing a few things actually, Dan, with the on the Patreon. Like there was I won't spoil anything, but there's like sort of behind the scenes like concept art and like cool. Sort of logo designs and things like that. And it's seeing like the process that you're going through in it is class. It's well worth a subscribe. So anyone listening, head over there.
Yeah, and people can. We'll put all that in the notes and stuff where they can find it. But but you've shown us little teasers along the way, and they've always looked so cool and engaging. And like you've had like the mythical creatures, and you've shown us like some of the actual props and things. And I showed my wife the other day because me and Jack are so excited for this. We think it's an amazing project that I think is calling out for in Wales, an actual like reclaiming in the nice way, not reclaiming in the reform way. It's the nice reclaiming way. It's like but I showed my wife because I talked about it. I showed her the King Arthur, the 2006 one with Clive Owen, which is the most insulting bastardization ever. We
had a whinge about that the other day, didn't we, in person?
So bad. Yeah. But it feels like it does feel like more than ever people are really proud of Wales in a nice way. It doesn't feel like it's an exclusive thing, but there's a real interest in Welsh history and like defining Wales as not just being a part of England or a part of the UK.
It's so funny that loads of people have, they probably don't realise it, but Wales is associated with so many high fantasy films already, because so many of the films of that genre are like filmed in Wales or partially filmed in Wales. There's so many, but it's never set in Wales in the film, if that makes sense. Exactly. It's like, this is, I don't know, the banks of, I don't know, some meadow in England or something like that, or some fantasy land or whatever. But a lot of that stuff is set in Wales because we do have a very, exactly.
It's like, honestly, it's like, we're in Dinarwic or somewhere, and then we're in a quarry, a slate quarry, and then we've got this, and then it's got a castle on top of it, and then it's got this to mask it a bit, so it's not, and it looks, I know it's not embarrassed to be in Wales, but there's a value in having the audience knowing that Tom Cruise is on that motorbike. And it's not a stuntman. There's a huge value to that. Yeah. And there is a huge value to knowing that is in Wales. We are in Wales. But it's not like Wales as a film set looking like something else. It's Wales looking like fantasy Wales.
It is, yeah. Like I can't tell you the amount of times that me and Frank say we try and watch sort of Welsh adjacent films as much as we can, but things set in Wales. Every time there's a scene where you go, I know that. It's like that Leo DiCaprio meme. You go, that's down by so and so, isn't it? Something, and it does give you a real and especially when I don't know why this has come into my head, but it was that bloody Snow White film they did not too long ago with Kristen Stewart and Chris Hemsworth. There's a beach scene on that, a battle on a beach. And that's set in Wales. I can't remember the exact beach of it now. I did have it in my head 2 seconds ago.
Freshwater West?
I think you are right there. It might be that one.
They tend to do a lot of filming down there.
I think they did that one. It's the same one they did
Harry
for
Potter.
Robin Hood.
Robin Hood and Harry Potter.
Robin Hood with Russell Crowe in it. The not so good Robin Hood, as we know, Kevin Costner is the epitome of that. But anyway, neither here nor there. But yeah, when you see that and it looks incredible and it's the perfect setting, and you think that is Wales, like, do you mean? And we've got such a diverse range of those settings. That's another thing that I think Wales has to offer and has been used in the past, but not said it's Wales. Do you know what I mean? So putting it back on the map, I think, is such a massive thing.
Well, there was a select committee report in 23, I think it was, and it said Wales should capitalise on this. I think it said something like should be known as the land that the only and main land of King Arthur and dragons or something, and it suggested a load of things like installations, visitor experiences, things like that. It didn't mention a film, but what we've done is built that infrastructure really, and so we've built this thing we've got another project called Mythical Wales, which is an interactive platform. It's an online map of legends and places all over the country.
Oh mate, you're speaking my language. That is I'd be downloading day one. That if you notice the little map up there, I can't do that. I had that when I was a kid. Yeah,
I had that. Yeah, but so it's online now, and it's not really populated very well, and it's just kind of getting in its very early stages now, but it's it has a social value because it's everybody's tied. It's got a story, that we want people to own these local legends. We've got an education program which is free for kids, free for teachers, and they can upload their local legends and so on to this map.
Oh, that's fun.
Oh, I love that, man.
And it's we've got a D&D game.
We should put you in touch.
I'd say the nerd in me is just going crazy.
Well,
I know.
You might have heard. Have you heard there's a game coming out about the Mabinogion? There's a
Yes.
so we had the guy who's making that come on here, and he
heard it,
he came back in touch recently because it's kind of progressed to the next level. But we should put you guys in contact together to see if you can kind of like add something about yours into his game, or something of a way of gamifying history. It's such a good way of getting young people to like really enjoy it. And like you said,
Definitely.
like King Arthur is probably the most well-known fantasy kind of hero probably in the world, really, isn't he? Like, well, it's definitely up there.
Well, this is the thing,
who doesn't know King Arthur? Yeah,
part of our pitch is, that something, I think Hobbiton gets 750,000 visitors a year, something like that. Star Wars made billions. Game of Thrones contributed, a lot. I can't remember the exact figures. Something to Northern Ireland and Harry
we said
Potter.
no to that first, didn't we?
Yeah,
we said
exactly.
no to the Welsh government turned down Game of Thrones, didn't they, for some of the Northern Ireland filming? It's like a real. Like you said, that could be
absolutely shooting themselves in the foot. Yeah,
but there hasn't been a sort of cohesive project that goes across departments. There isn't a department that can do this in the country. I don't think So we're it, really. So we've got the Mythical Wales program, so which combines locations for people to visit, but also filming locations will be on there, so that we can. And we're actually deliberately filming in some places to attract visitors.
that's brilliant.
We've got things like you'll like this one. That at Cumelan, at Elan Valley. What is it? Caban Coch Reservoir.
Yeah.
Behind the visitor centre, there is a warning sign with, a yellow and red triangle and yellow writing and whatever it, and it says "Danger Llanhigyn-y-Dŵr."
Oh, I think I saw that on your socials.
We didn't share
not
it.
Too long ago. Yeah.
Well, no, Dan sent it to us on email, and I don't think we wanted to share it at the time. But it looks amazing.
It was just an idea.
It's so good.
And for people to visualize it, it's like a warning deer crossing kind of sign, but like on the road. But it's this mythical Welsh beast flying, and it looks fantastic.
Yeah, I'll send you an image of it or something.
If we're able to share it,
if we can share it, that'd be so good.
We can put it back on socials, but it just like you mentioned, it brings it to life. Doesn't it?
I love that. I do love that idea, though, mate. That you're sort of not just making the film, which I think would be a huge enough deal in itself, but like setting that kind of groundwork so that the next one, or next person who wants to make a Welsh mythology based film, or even just a mythology fantasy thing based in Wales, they've got that kind of workbook then.
Well, this is the first of a series of films. You can't really make one film economically now, so we're making a series of films, and there are other things like there's our fight director Kenan is going around the country doing sword fighting workshops, so teaching stage combat. So we're calling it Lle Arthur, the army of Arthur.
Love that.
So the whole country is kind of basically stage combat trained, as many people as possible, so they can be in our films, but also in other people's films. And we're upskilling people, publicising, and it's a laugh as well.
Do you know you say like universe building in like Marvel? You're like literally universe building, but in Wales. You've brought like everything, every aspect is actually real and livable, which I think is so cool.
Are you going to do? That's the thing. Like nobody, the Llanhigyn-y-Dŵr is in that lake, and you will see manifestation. We're not saying, "Hey, here's a joke." There's a there's not if you ask the guides what's in there, they'll tell you. that they've seen Flam Hicken-Adur, and they'll explain the life cycle and things like that.
To go back to the training up fighting folk around Wales,
are
you going to use?
You're not. I'm not. Nobody's training you.
No, God knows.
The last thing we want is a.
I got my axe, mate. Anyway, don't worry. I'll just flail that around like a drunken madman. I was going to say, are you going to steal a line from Franks' repertoire from when he was a young bruiser, where he used to say, "Go find your 5 hardest mates, and I'll knock them out."
Yeah, that used to be my go-to. If there was some like proper big guy who was going to kick my head in, I'd say, "Yeah, come back when you got 5 harder mates, mate. We'll make it a fair fight."
I can't wait to see that the script final. So that I will not cut that. Shut down production otherwise. But
wasn't there an Underworld album called Second Hardest in the Infants or something? Brilliant title.
Well, I haven't heard it. I got to get into that. We asked some of our listeners on our Patreon for some questions, Dan, and one of the big ones was like around production. It was and I think that's because I think most people have a real clue about how production works. Would you be able to give us a little bit of insight to how? So you've got the funding, you've got all the stuff ready to start going. What stage you at now?
Where do you even start, sort of thing?
Yeah, and how what does it look like if you were to say, this is the next 3 months?
What's it look like? Well, at the moment, what we're building another Flam Hicken-Adur, because we've made 2 maquettes of the this creature is a water leaper. That's the main thing we're doing at the moment. And so one of the big kind of decisions we had to make was how to do the effects. And we've had this debate for about 2 years or something. How do we do the visual effects? Because on the one hand, we can't compete with Hollywood or London, in digital effects. I mean, the budget is colossal for that sort of thing. The other hand, I think that I really enjoyed the Marvel films, and I really enjoyed the Hobbit, Smaug in the Hobbit and stuff. That's digital stuff. I feel like I've seen everything digital, and I feel like everyone else has. I think other people feel the same way. I sense that. I don't know if that's true, but I think, again, there is a value to having something solid like my little Yoda here, because he's there. In the Empire Strikes Back with Yoda, you knew there was something solid there, and there was craft behind it, and there was something.
There's something about your brain, isn't it, that can tell if something's not quite real. If there's something there, it's practical. It's a physical thing in a physical world, and your brain just clicks into that. I think
lots of Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings was practical, and then the Hobbit was digital. And I still think the practical of Lord of the Rings holds up better than the digital of the Hobbit.
Yeah. And also, the orcs are particularly
definitely. They're terrifying. They're really scary when that. But I think there's a trend. People now going back to physical media, and people go back to physical music, and instead of just digital things. I think there's a real passion for real things. They can talk about we've had a lot of fake. We've had loads of fake for the last 20 years of fake Instagram profile. People looking different online. The Marvel of Marvel movies being really digital. And I think me and Jack especially, we
authenticity is coming back, isn't it? I keep hearing that authenticity.
I know it does sound a bit like buzzwords, but I watched Braveheart for the 100th time the other night, and that's 1994. And there's the physical effects that when some guy gets his leg chopped off, if that was done with digital stuff in 1994, it would look dog shit. And because it's done with practical effects, it still holds up, and it's still genuinely, you're in that moment. You go, oh shit.
And just not to say that me and Franks are doing the exact same thing at the exact same time all the time, right? But we did happen to be watching Braveheart the same night together, right?
Separately.
Separate.
Yeah,
but
we weren't even together.
I got to the bit where Wallace is storming that sort of the wooden fortress in his town. Yeah. And there's that bit, someone gets a hammer to the head, right? And he's got a helmet on. And you know exactly what the practical effect is there. It's just obviously a blood pack there between his head and the top of the helmet. Someone hits you with a foam hammer or whatever it might be. It spurts blood down there. He acts like he's been bashed in the head. Yeah. But that works so well. It looks incredible. It hasn't dated. You know what I mean? I think it was great. So the fact you're leaning into that kind of practical
and
effects.
Your models look fantastic. I don't know if we can share any of that, Dan, but you shared us some before, and they've worked in quite really, really high profile studios, and they're working with actual like genuine experts who are fantastic. So the work they do is like we don't justify it just by explaining it. So we'll share stuff on socials and
if we're allowed to, of course.
You know, if you want to go to the Crew on the Excalibur film, you can see the lot. But the one thing I think part of the Cavangray model is that you have kind of provenance. So if you buy your organic eggs or whatever, you know where they've come from. When you buy certain brands for that story that's gone into them, certain you buy the certain booze, and because it's brewed real ale or whatever. The one thing that you don't usually care about the story about is stories, is films. Is that real made? And when you see effects that we make, you kind of either have seen them being made painstakingly by real craft people, or that they have. So there's a story within, there's a meta story there, and it's that thing of authenticity. You're contributing to, your money is going into something great in order to make it. It's not profit after the fact. It's not wearing a Game of Thrones t-shirt because saying I liked Game of Thrones. When you buy one of our t-shirts, cheap, one size fits all. You're the money's going into making the film. So
it's it's so good to hear that that's baked into the whole process, because I think something me and Frank have said, I think a million people online have said before, about like the difference between the original Lord of the Rings trilogy and The Hobbit, for example, is the original Lord of the Rings trilogy is so great with practical effects because it was like made with love. Do you know what I mean? There's people who really put the time and effort in. They wanted to be part of something hugely creative, and like it was, there was if you watch the extra features, like I have like a million times, there's people just like on constant shifts just knitting bits of chainmail, you know what I mean? And it's that dedication and that kind of, like you said, being part of a real thing. I think it's priceless, really.
But actually, I know I kind of love that, but also like I'm also a fan of they're actors, they act. So I know people who are on The Hobbit, and they're like, they went through months of training for the actors. How to walk like a dwarf, do in this situation, and they put the suits on. They were like, well, we can't,
can't do it that
windows. So that's several months. So I'm a big fan of going to like you go and stand over there and look happy, or they're actors. They tend to be able to.
What are the hurdles then? So what hurdles have you had so far? Because that was one of the other questions we had, was has there been any specific, like maybe Welsh specific hurdles, or just hurdles in general that you've come across so far? Because you're actually in production now, aren't you?
Well, we're in semi-production. We're in pre-production, really. Yeah. I mean, it's all crisis management.
It does sound stressful.
Well, I suppose it could be stressful, but
it's a lot of spinning plates, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's so many spinning plates. I mean, yesterday I was talking, had one conversation about swords, and then another one about Welsh cakes. The Welsh cake Sarah, the Welsh cake maker. Where I was going with that, I think, was long ago I started a sentence about this. How do you render these monsters? And we were wondering whether we could. Long short of it, we're stop motion animating the Llanhican so we have to. We're creating another model of him. It's quite an involved thing now, to create a stop motion model, because it's got to support itself. It's got to be movable in certain ways and things like that. So, and Paul Thomas, who's the director of animation, he's just done Wallace and Gromit and Shaun the Sheep. And stuff. So but it's nobody does that anymore. I really animate. Harryhausen, we call it Harryhausening, actors with stop motion models, and so you might see some of that in the next couple of months.
Ticking so many boxes for me. I used to love those old films, like the old, like Jason and the Argonauts and things like that. I grew up watching those, so that sort of thing sort of appeals to me massively. But I imagine that must be really difficult as well. And correct me if I'm wrong, but like with the Llanhigyn duel, so you got like at least 2 models, and I'm assuming the Llanhigyn duel is going to be in the water at some point as well. Does that present a whole other challenge? Where it's like
actually, it's interesting that, because the Llanhigyn Dŵr is kind of manifests in times of doom, of like famine, or and it kind of comes through the veil from Annwn, or from
the end of the
sort
world.
Or the other world, we call it, because it's not the sort of Christianized hell. It's a similar sort of the depth of the world.
It's not like
I fell into that Christian trap. Damn it! I got absolutely duped.
No Christ magic. No Jesus magic.
No Jesus magic.
What's the scale of that then? What in literally, as in phically? What kind of size these models you work with?
I haven't got the. We call it. The first one was called Gary. We call it just because we thought that was a sort of. And the second one is called Karl Heinz at the moment, because Dave, who's making it, likes Wagner. But nice. But he materializes in this kind of gloop called Brichlas and Aved, and it's kind of this. So you get an intimation that this is going to materialize. And it has this kind of slick of like an ink stain on the world, it kind of goes between water and land.
This color,
and that's the thing.
That's so good, man. Because like even the mythological symbology, they would like the for those who haven't listened just before, maybe don't know this, like Annwn or Annwfn is like the Celtic otherworld, the Welsh believed in, and other Celtic races. It's often accessed through water, isn't it? So like the fact that it would be this like slick kind of shiny sort of element to it while it's on the land, that makes like total sense.
It makes it very hard, because the Llanhigyn Dŵr is so terrible. I mean, if you see it, it's pretty horrific. I
remember you showing us the model. I think the last time we spoke, and it was like, I was like, that's gnarly. That is gnarly.
Yeah, that was Gary, the first one, and
Gary.
So when I said to the artist, I want a nightmare. I don't get involved in the I don't specify what, because I want to give them freedom. So they've come up with this thing that's a sort of cross between a bat, a rat, and a spider. It has spider eyes that burst and pop, and it's kind of it's the idea is that it has this gloop as well, which gets you stuck and draws you, so it's very difficult to fight, and it's almost unbeatable. That's the thing. So it's a terrifying creature.
You mentioned quite a few people there. Like, how big is the crew who kind of make up the production for it? Because we got it's hard to kind of visualize any kind of because it just seems I can't spin more than 2 plates. 2 plates spinning, that's me done. My head's gone. But it just seems like you've got so many different things. And when you said then you give trust to the experts to kind of do their field. How many kind of field of experts do you have?
Well, it's weird because again of the Cyfangre model is really a response to the question, how do you produce a £13 million project, which is incredibly high risk? How do you finance that? And the normal way is you get 13 million quid, spend it, and then see if it works. And that's why it 80 or 90% of the time it doesn't work, which is why it's very, very difficult to get your 13 million quid. And the Cyfangre model is to do it as an agile business. So you try something out. Does it work? If it doesn't work, you pivot and try something else. And the why we can try out half-made things, try out doing things in part, is because we've got this crew on the website, so we can show people, see what they're liking, we can test it out, and also it's earning a bit. because you pay to be a member of the crew. We've got T-shirts. We sell things so you can actually buy a storyboard, and then we'll draw the storyboard, photograph it, and send you the storyboard. So you can fuel so everything kind of pays for itself, and it that won't pay for the whole film, but what it does is it makes the film into a business. So when someone has to give you $1 million, or when someone's giving you a business, they're not punting £1 million on this working as a film. They're putting £1 million into a business that's already generating money through beer and Welsh cakes and things like that. So, and also that kind of the business side of things, our products. So we've got the beer which you tried, and
Purple Moose,
beautiful
which give
stuff.
them a shout out.
Moose,
They're fantastic.
They
also make a beautiful chutney, which my wife picked up on the weekend.
Oh, do they? Yeah. We've got mead, things like Welsh cakes, all that kind of stuff. They promote Wales as a sort of quality thing. They penetrate markets where not just a film can get to, and the film likewise penetrates an audience that they wouldn't get to normally. So it's all kind of integrated, and that's why it's a really weird production, because I am literally supervising the creation of stop motion and filming of stop motion animation, and doing script stuff and whatever, and doing Welsh cakes.
I was just about to say, then you've got people doing Welsh cakes, people making beer for you and stuff. Yeah, maybe not the usual stuff from production.
And actually, we're doing another thing, which is a kind of a running map. So Lawrence, who's actually the CEO of Purple Moose, did a mythical run route for us around. Nice. I think it was Mynydd y Gaer in Denbigh, and he went. He did a run route, a mythical route. Said so it combines running with being in the landscape and being aware of the mythology and stuff. So everything serves many purposes, and it's completely different to a normal production. I don't think there's anything that's.
I say this is an absolute multi-pronged attack on Wales. I love it. It's just like if we don't get you on the beer, we'll get you on Welsh cakes. We don't get you on Welsh cakes, get you on the mythical runs. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. Beer, no thanks. I'm Muslim. I don't drink. Have a Welsh cake. You're part of it.
Yeah.
There's no way you're not getting it.
I'll see. I'll try and remember to send you some Welsh cakes. They honestly, they are dead. They're all really good, but they're from Blasis Welsh Cakes. Who do our Welsh cakes. They're already great, but there's
something else.
Chocolate and toasted almond.
It's
like something you get in a posh restaurant.
I'm not saying I expect these on my doorstep, Dan, but if I don't get them, I'm going to be bitterly disappointed.
We got quite a really passionate amount of listeners. And a great amount of American listeners as well. Do you think it would cross over to America? Do you think people would understand? Would it be too entrenched in British things, or do you think it's? I suppose it's people understand the concept of it. But as this sounds so fantastic as a Welsh person, but do you think from other parts of the world also really appreciate what's going on with what you're doing?
It has to. It's got to be. It's what they call a 4-quadrant film. So it's got to travel. So. For example, there's no blood and guts in it, like Braveheart or something. So we want older kids to, enjoy it as well. So it's got to travel, and it's got to be enjoyed in America, in China. It's a full cinematic release, and it's got to work really well there. So, but on the broader point, I would say, do you remember the Simpsons episode with I can't remember. I mean, there's loads of them on, but it's about baseball, and I know nothing about baseball, but you enjoy it because these are. I mean, I think you enjoy the fact that this is a culture that you don't know about. That America doesn't know that Arthur was Welsh, and that I've never seen a Llanhican Adur. It's something different. There's an Avanc in it as well.
Yes, please. One of my
there's
faves.
all these. Oh yeah. So all these creatures they haven't seen, and but the thing is that the reason why King Arthur is so successful as a story is because it's universal. I mean, it speaks to something primal. If you think about what it is, King Arthur, this is what when I talk about it, I'm going, Northern Ireland's got Game of Thrones. Well, what have we got? We've got King Arthur. It's just the story of a lad who lives with his. He's an orphan who lives with his uncle, and he meets a wizard and gets a magic sword, and he's secretly the king. Well, what's nobody wants to see that. I mean, they want to see Star Wars, which is about a lad who lives with his uncle, who's an orphan, and he gets a magic sword and learns magic of a wizard. And then I go, so Game of Thrones, what's that? There's Jon Snow is King Arthur, and then Lord of the Rings, Frodo is an orphan, lives with his uncle, goes off, gets a magic sword, and goes off with a wizard and so on. And so does Aragorn. Aragorn's the king who,
he gets his
absolutely. It's all King Arthur, and the best rendition of King Arthur ever is the sort of fantasy King Arthur is Star Wars. I mean, it's Jedi Knights. They're called that for a reason. So.
Well, we have, we'd say, our. We mentioned this quite a bit, but we have a large amount of American followers, and I think because Americans love their roots, so they're often very proud of being from Scotland and things. But we said this, we sound like an old record. People hear us a lot, but we feel like Wales doesn't get that representation. Like when Wales moved to places like Scranton and places, they assimilated far more. But we found that so many Americans are genuinely passionate about Welsh history, and they'll be some of your biggest cheerleaders. A lot of our Patreon members are from America. They're very proud to support and all that thing. So this could be a rallying cry to any of our American listeners to get involved, and as soon as or join the crew or whatever you can do. And it could be a film that they could be like, hey, that's my culture. That's where I'm from. And I think that's a great way of
100%.
Yeah. Because America's is so important that we get in there. I mean, it will be released in America, obviously, but
that's amazing.
You can join in now on the website. Join in, and it's $2.99 a month, and you can see the film being made. But you're in an absolute sense, you are contributing to the production of it. You're making it possible.
It makes our Patreon look a bit shit. Our Patreon is but and also Patreon does take a heavy amount of fee. That's what I'll say.
I was just about to say, it's like you're saying you will contribute to like a seminal film about Welsh culture and stuff. With us, it's like we go on the piss down to Pembroke sometimes.
I know which is the worthier cause, but.
We did have a Patreon, but now it's the crew, and it's partly because then we can sort of control everything.
Patreon takes so much; it's insane.
I know
how much
they
Patreon
slash a bit, don't they? They're the Saxons of the podcasting. I'll tell you that.
So you mentioned. So I know this is probably an impossible question to answer, but if you were looking at a time frame, when do you expect people might be able to see a trailer for this to be be going out?
Well, they can see the teaser, which is online at the moment.
Oh, you're a good salesman, Dan. I love it.
Which is excellent for our listeners, by the way. Me and Franks have seen that because I think you showed us a while back before I think it released. And now it's officially released, so it's okay for us to say this. But excellent. Go and have a look at it, anyone who's listening.
We've got a making of the teaser, which is will go on to the crew as well. If it's not already there, I must remember. I'm going to write that down to do it. That's quite funny as well because I'm like not a believer in this kind of so we get a trailer for everyone, and it's like I don't know, whatever that is, 20 grand or whatever, get a trailer, we get, and we have this, that, and the other, and we have a tent, something. Like the teaser is very, and I think hopefully it looks like a feature film, but the kind of scrappiness of it. I mean, that was another thing. I told Sylvester McCoy, I said, go and stand over there and look sad or whatever. And I know I knew he could. He just sort of, I've worked with him before, and he's just like, now you're surprised, and now you're this, that, and the other, and you'll be. I mean, I told him about the character and stuff, but and then you need somebody. You need to see a long shot of him or something. So get one of the crew to put his cloak on, go and stand over there. And then my son was there, and my son was operating smoke machine. So
nice.
So he's pumping this, smoke machine. So go and put this cloak on. And so one of the shots, I don't know whether it made it to the teaser, but one of the shots in of Sylvester is actually an Aryan. Actually, the character is an Aryan. It's not. People go, is that Myrddin? But it's an Aryan because he's Scottish.
Yeah.
So one of the shots, the long shots, is my son in wellies standing in this marsh going, over a microphone, over a walkie-talkie going, what's the room? Come forward. And he's going, I can't, it's too deep. Come forward. And then this, smoke machines. And then, so you want this smoke over the water, this amazing sort of primeval lake. And the wind blows, and then you get this sort of all blown off. You get this gust of white smoke going over the road, and But anyway, it's very scrappy, but hopefully it doesn't look too unprofessional. I can't. There was a question there. Wasn't there?
Well, if you think, how far away do you think it is until?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be 2 years. I think unfortunately it's going to be that long, but I'd like to shoot next spring the principal photography. So, but
and when did you start the project? I think people find it interesting just to know the scope and the kind of how much work these like things go into, because I think it's crazy. When you first had the idea, how long ago was that? When you first?
I don't know. I mean, oh God, Dave, who's the production designer, said I'd mentioned it 14 years ago or something.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
But it's like, I think it's morphed and then it changed. There was going to be a TV series and I had an American producer, interested. And then I thought, I was kind of, I've done a lot of work that's not been produced. And that's just normal. I mean, as a writer or director, you work on stuff and then it drops because something, there's so many factors. And then I thought, I can't do this anymore. And that's why I started this company, because I want to just get stuff and make it. And that's why we know this will get made because it's a moving business. It's not dependent on one thing. So, I mean, but the thing that you've got to do, I think, that there are so many projects that start without a finished script, and it's like building a building without a blueprint.
It's so mad to hear that. That's like, I know you could probably point to a few films where you could say, yeah, that absolutely happened there. But to hear you confirm it's something like, it's crazy, like you said, to start a project without the sort of blueprint. It's crazy.
And if you have a blueprint, if you have a solid island, you can swim away from it quite far. If somebody comes up with it, like, I was amazed. There's that the guy who did Inisherin,
Martin McDonough, is it?
Yeah. So he doesn't allow any improvisation, any sort of contribution. So I think if one of the actors comes up with something good, you'd be mad not to use it.
Yeah.
So, or the crew, they all contribute. I mean, I know I'm in charge, but I say no to a lot of it. But you'd be insane not to use a good idea, because I get the glory as well. So,
exactly.
But it just improves the whole thing, because you limit it to your own experience if you don't do that. And so you have 50 people putting in ideas and what. It's amazingly rich.
It's a real melting pot, I suppose. Yeah, we just, like you said, you can get that like that flash in the pan every now and then. And you think, oh, great, Christ, that was better than what I put down to paper, sort of thing. Yeah,
if they're into it, and you get that authenticity, you must use it. But I mean, I love it if they go off piste and they start, because they're really into. But the script. A script is like designing a really detailed factory, which sounds really terrible, but it's got so many moving parts. You've got the characters have got to be appealing. The scenes don't have to be too, they have to. So that is the bit that you write. I mean, I wrote the film script. It must be at least 5 years ago.
Oh wow, yeah.
And we've just been battering it, changing it, attacking it, seeing if we can do things better. And that's the thing you need to spend time on. And that's the thing that ask a lot of producers what's the main thing about the film. They'll say the script, but they don't spend the time on the script. They spend the time trying to get Tom Cruise in it, or trying to and the script has to be really tight.
I don't think me and Franks could agree with you more. The amount of films we watch and talk about together, sometimes we watch them together, things like that. You can have a mid-budget film, you can have a really like micro-budget film, or a high-budget film. If the script is crap, then it's kind of you can tell sort of fairly early on. You're like, this film isn't really going anywhere, or you'll finish and go, that wasn't so much, that was so great. You can get a fantastic script on a micro-budget and think that's brilliant.
Yeah,
probably the hardest thing to get.
You can make a good film out of you can make a bad film out of a good script. You can't make a good film out of a bad script.
I think that's probably the thing that seems the hardest to get right as well. Because I think you can have enough money to make it look fantastic, but if the soul of it is the script and you haven't got that right, then it's kind of then where do you go? We recently saw Saint Maud, with Clark, and that was probably quite relatively low budget, but we loved that. We thought it was fantastic.
I've heard that's good. I've not seen it.
It's really good, really good. Yeah.
We I don't think we'd ever seen trailers or anything. I knew basically because I had Margaret Clark. She went to our school. She's in Rings of Power now, which is like like sort of what probably people know her most for. But we thought, we should check this on. Like that's our Welsh connection, if you like, and then ended up having way more of a Welsh connection than we thought.
Yeah, Dan, you might like this, wouldn't you? Yeah, because there's God in there. There's in there. God appears in through to speak to her, and the director had heard her speaking Welsh to her mum on the phone, and she was like, "Oh, I love the way you speak. That language. It just seems so rich and historic." And so they then had this new mythical character start speaking Welsh, and it was just Morfydd Clark, but her voice was lowered, they pitched it down. And then she was playing this kind of ethereal, sinister kind of creature in the background.
But it was a big surprise for us, sort of going in semi-blind to it, and then that came up. We're like, "Oh, this has even got more of a Welsh connection than we thought." Type thing.
Yeah, brilliant. I'll have to have a look at that. She's great. Morfydd Clark, I think she's
I did have a question myself, Dan, to vie away from the Patreon ones. Proceed. You may proceed. I was going to ask, so if you could describe the kind of the vibe, the feel of what Excalibur is going to be like, and compare it to another sort of high fantasy film, where are you kind of shooting the arrow on that? Where is that about going to land? I know it's probably you're going to maybe not be able to give us anything too definite there, but I just thought it may be great to give the listeners a kind of an idea of where we're aiming.
Well, I think if I say that, I think what I'm trying to, I think what fantasy does is ideally it gives you a country you can go to when you're sad or in a shit situation. You can watch that film and then you can imagine yourself and you can revisit it, and that's what it's about, hope. And that's Wales is very accommodating as a country. You don't get beaten up if you're English in Wales. You don't get Wales has been absolutely treated like, it's just hideously neglected, treated badly. The Welsh language, all this.
You'll start us off on another hour-long rant if you get on that road, mate. It's all right. We'll carry on with you.
The response from Wales has not been like this. Has been quite welcoming to strangers and other cultures and things. Wales absorbs.
It's a nation of sanctuary, isn't it? It's one of the things quite proud of.
Yeah, and it's but I think there is a sort of sense. Why hasn't Wales got it? This sort of. You're talking about the expats. Why hasn't it got that sort of Welsh? And it's because I think there's a sort of apologetic, or there's just a habit of we don't really do that. And this film is is like, fuck yes, you know. It's like it's not nationalistically Welsh. It's not, and it's not. It doesn't. It you know, for Wales, for Britain in this film, read Wales, because you know that's where the Britons fled to when the Saxons. You know, it's the last refuge of the British, I suppose.
Yeah.
But it is hopeful and triumphant. It's like, you know, the Excalibur, John Borman's film is the perfect rendition of that story. It's brilliant, and ours is nothing like it. But that succeeded in being wonderful and fantastic.
It was, yeah.
It was wonderful, despite being called. I mean, it's based on a book called The Death of King Arthur, which is like saying that the death of calling Star Wars the death of Luke Skywalker, or calling. I mean, it's so doom laden, and so many King Arthur films are gritty, doom laden. There are some, you know, sheep on an echoing, wind-bitten hillside, and there's people in poverty. Yeah, you know, it's
that Owen Franks mentioned earlier. You know, the Clive Owen same thing, isn't it? It's very bleak, very like grey, and like we're fighting for a dying country type thing. It's like so a shift away from that.
It was like this sense that you've got to have some historical stuff in it. We haven't got, you know, there's very little historical in it. You either make a historical film, I think, or you make that's accurate to history, one thing, or you make a story that's gonna. I want people to come out. When I went. I'm old enough to have seen Star Wars at the cinema. When I came out, I wanted a lightsaber so badly. I wanted to be a Jedi, and, you know, fight for good, and that's what I want to happen with this. Except I want to come out wanting to be knight, be honourable, fight for good, and.
Do you know,
want to go to Wales and learn Welsh.
What's so interesting about what you're saying with the kind of feel of this film is, I watched a video the other day. It was very good. It was like, sort of, what is the difference between mythology and fantasy? And mythology is stories that people used to believe way back when. You know, they used to actually think these things. They were often cautionary tales. Whereas fantasy is, you can make up anything you want in a fantasy, no problem. But with these mythology, it was something built around a culture. And I love the idea that you're marrying like these kind of two things, where it's like it's based on the mythology that used to be like Celts back in the day, or however long back you want to go. They used to believe these things, but you're marrying it with that like sort of fantasy element where you can sort of spread it out a little bit. It doesn't have to be this bleak historic drama, like you say.
And don't you also?
I think that's great.
You also think like Wales is quite good at being sometimes a bit downtrodden. We're kind of, and I think it's nice to not just do that, because if you were to make a Glyndŵr film, which would be fantastic, but it would always be like, oh, woe is us kind of thing. But you're coming at it with like a no fucking yay is us and celebrate it, and you don't really hear that an awful lot, do you? We like to be a little bit like. Pessimistic, and we're the underdog, but it's quite nice to be a bit more bashful and a bit more like pumping your chest,
don't we? Like, because
and
we often have been. Don't be wrong, but it's like that thing of if only we could have, but we lost, and we always lose type thing.
It becomes that like self-fulfilling prophecy. Then it's like we're only as big as we'll ever get, because we can't see. You know, this is our lot. This is Wales's lot, and it's quite exciting to think of you being a little bastion of making Wales braggy and be like, fuck it, you know, this is our story. And
I'm going to get so unbearably arrogant when this film drops. Just watch now. I'm going to feel insufferable.
It's like, you know, Oliver Clark doing it Welsh. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, it is Elvish. I mean, and you know, the world is wants to learn Elvish. There's so many people learn Elvish, and they're always looking for. You know, they're inventing new languages, and you know, and I mean, this sounds awful, but you know, I can't remember as a language in some sort of fantasy constructed language. You think, what's the point of that? You could just be making we don't know it, so why don't you just make some sounds and it'll save money. But we've got the actual language. We've got Tolkien logs, you know. And these things, like, I mean, this is where an episode of, I don't know, I don't know, I don't want to be insulting about some sort of, second-rate fantasy show that was filmed around the corner here. And I think, well, look, behind Tesco's, that's where bloody,
Bastard execution. There is.
That's where, that's where the actual giant, so-and-so came in Wales. So it's a real, it's a real kind of total, a vehicle for that mythology.
I love it.
Fantasy,
and real celebration of it. I think that's what's, it all sounds amazing, but I think that to me is it's something that it's such a rich vein that has not been tapped as well. So it's like to be shouting about that is great.
It's also because this is what you have. Why now in pitch decks for films, and you've always got, or programs, you've got why now, why does it have to be made now? It has to be made now because we're surrounded by horrible leaders. Donald Trump has provided us with exactly the blueprint for what King Arthur is not in the film. We need heroes, we need hope. Environmental defeatism is everywhere. It seems like we need hope. We need stories that give us hope and show us a better way to be, and that's part of the thing.
There's too many Mordreds about, and we need a King Arthur to come and raise us up and rally us to it. I like it.
I was going to say, Dan, we're at an hour mark, so I was going to say give us a rallying cry for this film, but I think you've kind of just given us there with this a story of hope. How can people support them? So we'll put all this in the show notes, but this is coming to the end of the episode. Thank you so much for your time, Dan. It's genuinely, me and Jack couldn't be more excited for.
Let's go for another hour. That's what I'm thinking, but no, we've got to cut it somewhere.
So if the listeners who want to support this could take one piece of, one call to action right now, what would it be from you, Dan?
I think join the crew if you can on the website, but sign up to the mailing list.
We'll put all this in the descriptions.
We'll link everything possible.
It's really important to do that, because if you're at all interested in it, sign up. We won't send you any Nigerian Prince emails or anything. But what it means is we don't have to advertise. We don't have to pay to advertise to get to tell you about things. So sign up to that. And
where can they find that? So if they head to
ExcaliburFilm.com.
Excalibur Film.
And we're on, I think we're on Instagram.
We'll share some. I'm sure we'll clip a bit of this up and we'll get out there. But
that's really useful if you can. Any sort of publicity you can do.
Yeah. I saw it in the wild the other day. I'm never on Facebook, but for work I had to be on Facebook, and I saw an article on there that said £13 million production company come in, and I went through it, all the comments for like how vile Facebook comments are. It could be a story about like pancakes, and then it turns into why Muslim culture has taken over Britain. What's happening here? But it was all just so positive. All the comments were just excited, and I thought, wow, if this movie can make people genuinely excited and not downtrodden and pissed off. And it was really exciting to see it in the wild. And it feels like this is like, I think every year until it gets made, we'd love to get you back on, Dan, so we can hear.
I'm genuinely buzzing. Like I want to like do something like march on Parliament or like raid a castle or something. Now you filled me with this like sort of Welsh zest.
Oh, brilliant!
So diolch yn fawr, Dan. Thank you so much. We can find you on. We'll put all the links in there. But you're also on Instagram under Excalibur Film. So people can.
Excalibur Film.
Deal.
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure, lads. Thanks very much. I'll come on again. So many things are happening. So
thanks for your time, man. I
can't wait for the next update now. It's going to be we'll have to get you on. We'll have to get you on
it's
again.
20 to 9, and I assume you've had a busy week already. So thank you so much, mate. And we'll hopefully catch you on the next one. Diolch am gwrando pawb. Thanks for listening. Catch you all soon.
Cheers all.
Diolch. Da